You're listening to 133.7 FM The Rub, brought to you by the Periphery Telecom Entertainment Group, floating somewhere out there in your neck of the woods. And Canaries, the best slow toasted tobacco anywhere. And Trickle Dick's Diner. You'll be surprised at what you're eating, located between Charleston and its second planet. Tonight's story time tale comes from the Taurian Concordance world of Renfield. It's about a man and his fiery passion for justice to bring along to the lawless and peace of the people of the arid plains called the Waste. Tonight's tale will be read by an intern whose name I've already forgotten. So without further ado, enjoy.
The Crying Canyon. A solitary figure ambled down the dusty, sun-scorched main street of the desolate town of Redemption's Edge. His boots echoed against the wooden planks with a rhythmic cadence that seemed to defy the eerie silence. The town folks peered cautiously through the shuttered windows, recognizing the leather duster and stern gait as a man who didn't belong. This was a place where whispers of danger danced on the wind, and the smell of fear lingered heavier than the scent of sagebrush. The wandering judge had arrived. As he approached the saloon, the swinging doors creaked open to reveal a sea of leather-clad men. Their eyes narrowed suspiciously at the newcomer. The air had cigarette smoke and the faint smell of sweat and spilled whiskey. The piano player's hand stilled upon the keys as the man in the duster stepped into the dimly lit room, his face weathered like an ancient map, etched with the lines that told 1,000 silent tales of battles won and lost. He removed his hat, revealing a mane of silver hair and a steely gaze that could cut through the densest of lies. In the corner, the local sheriff, a man gone soft with bribery and fear, recognized the insignia on the judge's chest and felt a knot tight in his gut. The judge didn't bother with greetings. Instead, he strode purposefully into the bar and slammed his fist down on the counter. The bartender, a burly man with a nervous twitch, tentatively approached, wiping his hands on a stained apron. "What'll it be?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "Justice," the judge replied, his voice a low rumble that seemed to shake the very foundation of the saloon. The room fell silent, the tension palpable as the town folk shifted uneasily in their seats. "There's a gang of outlaws holed up in the canyon west of here, preying on the innocent, and I'm here to see them hang." The sheriff's face paled, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. The judge's reputation preceded him, a harbinger of fate for the corrupt and the wicked. "They're a nasty bunch," the sheriff managed, his voice quivering, "but we've had some trouble rounding them up." The judge's gaze never wavered. "I don't expect you to serve them up on a platter. Just point me in the right direction." He reached into his pocket and slammed a silver coin on the bar. "For your trouble." The sheriff's sweat, beading on his brow, nodded stiffly and gestured to the town map hanging above the bar, his trembling finger tracing the route to the canyon. They called themselves the Snakebite Seven, led by a man named Black Jack McAllister. They're holed up in the old mine shaft called Mine 37. They're well armed and ready for trouble. The judge took a long, contemplative pull on his whiskey the bartender had placed before him. His eyes never left the map, his mind calculating the layout, the escape routes, the best position to lay an ambush. "Thank you for your information," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I'll be on my way." With a nod, he turned and left the saloon, the door swinging shut behind him with a thud that echoed down the empty street. The townfolk watched him go, a mix of relief and anxiety playing across their faces. They knew that with the judge's arrival, things were about to change. The air was electric with anticipation, charged with the promise of justice long overdue. The judge's horse, a sturdy steed as stoic as its rider, stood patiently outside the saloon. The man in the duster swung into the saddle with the grace of a man who had lived his entire life in the saddle. His eye surveyed the town one last time before he urged the horse westward, towards the ominous canyon. The animal seemed to sense the gravity of the mission, its gait steadfast and sure. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with a fiery tapestry of red and oranges. As the judge approached the narrow mouth of the canyon, the shadows grew long and treacherous, but the judge's resolve did not falter. He knew that the Snakebite 7 would be waiting for him, anticipating his moves, but he also knew that they underestimate his resolve. His Colt Peacemaker Model 43 rested comfortably on his hip, his laser pistol on his belt, a silent sentinel ready to speak in the language the outlaws would understand. As he rode deeper into the canyon, the echoes of distant laughter and the crackle of a campfire grew louder. The air grew thick with the stench of unwashed men and the acrid scent of gunpowder. The judge dismounted, tying his horse to a sturdy cactus far enough away to avoid detection. He drew his pistol and checked the chambers, ensuring each was loaded with the wrath of righteousness. The horse, as if knowing the gravity of the situation, barely whinnied. The judge crept through the jagged rocks, his eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of the outlaws. His years of experience had taught him the art of silence, moving with the grace of a ghost in the desert night. The campfire grew closer, revealing a ramshackle camp surrounded by jagged cliffs. The Snakebite 7 were huddled around the flames, sharing a bottle of stolen whiskey and spinning tales of their exploits, their laughter grating on his nerves like nails on a chalkboard, a symphony of malice and greed. Their vehicle, a modified armored monstrosity that looked like it had been pieced together from the wrecks of a dozen other cars, was parked haphazardly near the canyon's entrance, blocking the path. It was a clear message to any who dared approach: turn back or face the wrath of the Snakebite 7. The judge studied it with a critical eye. It was a symbol of their power and arrogance, but also of vulnerability. He counted them, memorizing their face: the scar-faced leader, Blackjack McAllister, with a sneer that could curdle milk; the twins, Hatch and Hal, known for their lightning-quick draws and sadistic tendencies; the burly mute, named Crusher; the sly snake gambler, the fast-talking silver-tongued preacher, the sharpshooter Slim, and the young jittery kid called Billy the Whelp. The judge knew their names, their crimes, and their fates, all written in the ledgers of his mind. He approached the camp, his steps measured, each one placing him closer to the reckoning. The outlaws, lost in their reverie, didn't notice him until he was almost upon them. "Evening, gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying through the canyon. The laughter died as they scrambled to their weapons, their eyes wide with shock and fear. Blackjack McAllister, the leader, stepped forward, his hand hovering over the pistol on his hip. "Who the hell are you?" he snarled. The judge's hand remained steady at his side. "The law," he simply replied. Blackjack's sneer grew into a full-blown snarl. "You ain't from around here," he spat. "You got no jurisdiction." The judge's eyes remained cold and unyielding. "Where there's no law, I am the law." He took a step closer, the dust rising around his boots. "And your day of reckoning is upon you, Blackjack McAllister." The outlaws exchanged a nervous glance, their hands tightening on their weapons. The tension was a living thing in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. The judge's hand remained poised at his side, a stark contrast to the forensic energy the men before him. He knew that the element of surprise was his ally, and he would use it wisely. "You've got a lot of nerve, mister," Black Jack sneered, trying to rein some semblance of control. "Coming out into our camp, talking about justice. We're the law around here." The judge took another step closer, his boot scraping against the rocky ground. "Your brand of law is no law at all. It's just fear and theft, dressed in a cheap facade of power." His voice remained calm, a stark contrast to the rising panic in the camp. "But fear not. I'm here to correct that." With a lightning-fast draw, Black Jack aimed his pistol at the judge, his finger tightening on the trigger. "You're a dead man." The judge's hand blurred in action, his Colt Peacemaker leaping into his hand as if drawn by a magnetic force. The hammer fell with a sharp click, and the shot rang out, the sound echoing through the canyon. Black Jack's gun hand jerked upward, a crimson flow blooming from his forehead, and he crumpled to the ground like a marionette with cut strings. The outlaws stared in shock as their leader's lifeless body hit the dirt. Panic erupted as the Snakebite 7 realized their invincibility had been shattered with a single bullet. The twins, Hatch and Hal, went for their guns in unison, but the judge was quicker. 2 shots rang out, and they fell in a tangle of limbs, their smug expressions replaced with the vacant stares of the deceased. The remaining 4 outlaws froze, their bravado forgotten in the face of such swift retribution. Crusher, the burly brute, made a break for the mine shaft, his heavy boots pounding the ground like a charging bull. The judge took aim with his laser pistol, the sights painting a red dot on the man's back. With a short whine of energy charging, filling the air, and a soft crack, the shot sizzled through in the darkness, striking Crusher and dropping him in mid-stride. The outlaw's escape plan had been thwarted. The gambler, his hand still hovering over his cards, took a step backwards, his eyes darting from the judge to his fallen companions. His hand moved to his holster, but the judge's voice stopped him cold. "The house always wins," he said, his gaze never leaving the card player's face. The gambler swallowed hard, and his hand hovered over his gun, sweat beading on his brow. The preacher, his eyes wide with terror, took a shaky step forward, raising his hands in surrender. "I'm just a man of the cloth, Judge," he pleaded, his silver tongue faltering for the first time. "I don't deserve to die with these heathens." The judge's gaze flickered to the man, his expression unreadable. "Your hands are stained with the same blood," he said coldly. "But I'm not here to play God." He aimed his pistols and gestured to the trembling outlaws. "Drop your weapons." The preacher nodded frantically, his eyes never leaving the judge's. The other 2 outlaws exchanged looks of disbelief before grudgingly laying their guns on the ground. The judge stepped over to them, his boots crunching in the dust. He bound their hands with the rope he found of their supplies, his movements swift and efficient. "You're making a mistake," Slim said, his voice shaking. "We've got friends." The judge's gaze remained steady. "Then they'll find you in the town jail awaiting trial." The outlaw's eyes grew wide as they were led out of the canyon and back to Redemption's edge. The town folk had gathered in the street, a mix of hope and fear in their eyes. They knew what the judge's arrival meant, but they hadn't dared to believe that it would be this swift and this decisive. The judge secured his captives in the sheriff's office. The sheriff, now sweating profusely, could hardly meet the judge's gaze as he took in the bound men. "These here men are guilty on all charges," the judge told him, his voice firm and unyielding. "Ensure their punishment is swift and fair." The townfolk gathered around the office, a murmur of excitement rippling through the crowd. They had heard tales of the wandering judge, but never in their wildest dream had they imagined he would come to their aid. The judge stepped outside, his eyes scanning the faces of the people who had suffered at the hands of the Snakebite Seven. "Peoples of Redemption Edge," he called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Your town is safe once more. These men have faced the consequences of their actions." The crowd parted before him, a mix of awe and gratitude in their eyes. "But remember," he continued, "justice is a living thing. It requires vigilance and courage from every one of you to thrive. Do not let the likes of these outlaws take root again." The sheriff, still in shock as to what was transpiring, stepped forward. "Judge, what about all the things they stole?" The judge's gaze softened slightly. "The gold and goods they stole are in the mine. They won't be leaving this town with them. But the true compensation is the peace of mind that comes from knowing that justice had been served." He turned and mounted his horse, the townfolk parting to make way for him. "And for that, I ask only that you live good, honest lives. That you stand together against the darkness that may seek to claim your town again. For as long as there is injustice, I will walk these lands, bringing the law to those who need it most." The crowd watched in silence as the judge rode away, his figure gradually shrinking into the dusty horizon. The night had fallen, but a new day was breaking over Redemption's Edge. The townfolk knew that the judge had left them with a gift more valuable than gold, the knowledge that justice still existed in their world, and that it could come to them when they needed it the most.